One of the more famous and terrifying creatures we're going to be talking about tonight is the infamous Mothman. This story begins as every good horror story does. On the evening of November 12th, 1966, in the town of Clendenin, West Virginia, a group of gravediggers was working when they claimed they saw something fly over them. It scared the crap out of them as they observed it go from tree to tree. They described it as a brown humanoid being. Now, this sounds absolutely absurd. However, the story gets even stranger and creepier, because on November 15th, 1966, two couples were hanging out in a car one evening. As they were sitting there in their car, they were to receive the shock of their life when they all of a sudden noticed a strange creature standing in front of their vehicle. Roger Scarberry and Steve Mallet were so traumatized by this that they told the local newspaper, Point Pleasant Register, about their encounter. They described the creature as being a 6 to 7 foot tall biped. They said it also had bright red eyes that were about 10 inches apart and that it also had wings, and its wingspan was probably close to 10 feet. They also noted that this creature was a fast flyer. They claimed if they had to guess that it could fly to close to 100 miles per hour. As mentioned earlier, they said it was bipedal, but they claimed it wasn't a good walker. The reason they know that is that the creature chased their car all the way to the outskirts of Point Pleasant. Now, once reaching the outskirts of Point Pleasant, though it switched from flying to walking or on two legs, they said it had the most awkward-looking walk, and that it walked into a field where it disappeared from their sights. Now, on the surface, this seems straight bonkers. However, when you really start to wade through it and look a little closer, it does start to get creepy. The first thing to note is that Clendenin is between 70 to 90 miles away from each other. Assuming that Scarberry and Mallet's description of this creature being able to fly at 100 miles per hour was even remotely close, then the creature could have very well easily covered that distance within an hour's time. Even if they were way off and say the creature could really only fly 10 miles an hour, it still could have made the distance in 3 days alone. Another thing that makes this even more interesting is that it's not just one person that is saying they saw this creature. It is in fact multiple eyewitnesses all corroborating their own details with each other, which gives to more credibility. However, over the next couple of days, more people would come forth about their strange sightings and encounters with this beast that was being nicknamed the Mothman. Now, over the next 3 days, a total of 8 more sightings had occurred. Sightings continued over the next year. And another interesting aspect of this case is that at some point, if stories are to be believed, it seems that the Men in Black became involved somehow. When the term Men in Black is used, it's almost entirely related to UFO reports. The legend goes that somebody will usually witness a UFO, and then within a few days or even an hour, some men will show up wearing black suits and looking very strange, like porcelain skin. They will try to accost you and intimidate you and scare you into silence. Residents of Point Pleasant reported that not long after the first sightings, strange men in black suits began to show up and began to intimidate and accost witnesses into silence. So, is there any truth to that? Who really knows? The Men in Black are an interesting phenomenon, and many things about them doesn't exactly make sense. Some people believe they are actually government agents. However, others claim that they are something else entirely. Some witnesses describe them from a distance that they look like ordinary people. However, upon closer inspection, they look off. Some witnesses say that if there are 2 of them, they look identical, but too similar. While we all know that there are shadow government agencies out there, there has been no official proof that the Men in Black are real, or should we say, no official proof. The best evidence to support the Men in Black comes from a video captured in the eyewitness account that happened a couple of years back. If the account is accurate, and if this were happening to the people at Point Pleasant, it would be pretty terrifying. However, we shouldn't be terrified, as the skeptics think they know what the Mothman really is. In fact, Dr. Robert L. Smith, a wildlife professor at West Virginia University, claims the Mothman is merely nothing more than a sandhill crane. He even claims it could be a deformed sandhill crane. In the area, there is an old World War II ammunition manufacturing depot called the TNT area. Now, an interesting fact about the TNT area is that by 1983, it was considered one of the most polluted and contaminated areas in the entire United States. If this bird spent any time around there, it's possible that it could have been exposed to toxic, potentially mutating chemicals, and thus could have caused it some physical deformities. Other skeptics say this was the work of some prankster, or that it had to do simply with sleep paralysis. Gotta love skeptics, as sleep paralysis seems to always be on the list for any explanation. The Mothman entered legendary status, though, in 1975, because on December 15th, 1967, tragedy struck, and the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant collapsed into the Ohio River. Now, a total of 46 people perished, and in 1975, author John Keel put two and two together and wrote a book called The Mothman Prophecies. In the book, Keel hypothesizes that the Mothman was actually a harbinger or omen for the bridge to collapse. His story took hold, and it is his story that has become the foundation for the legend of the Mothman itself. Now, if you visit Point Pleasant today, you will find that the Mothman has now become a huge part of the community. They have a Mothman museum, and their tagline is pretty funny. It says, "One of 12 things to do in Point Pleasant." However, in this museum, they have replicas of what the Mothman is supposed to look like, and they tell the various stories about encounters with this creature in the community over the years. The Mothman is an interesting beast and has left many people wondering what exactly it is. The skeptics, like they always do, say they know the answer. And while I am no expert, but I don't buy what the skeptics are selling here. Ironically, despite its name, the Mothman actually looks nothing like a moth. Almost all descriptions of this creature talk about red eyes. However, I find some reports to be interesting. They say the Mothman doesn't have a head and its eyes are located in its chest cavity area. To me, it's starting to sound like some type of machinery, but that's just a mere opinion. However, there's even wilder claims out there when it comes to the Mothman. Some have claimed that the Mothman visited both Chernobyl prior to the meltdown and was seen in New York City prior to 9/11. This has caused many people to claim that the Mothman is an omen of disaster. Once again, I can't for sure say that, or if they're reading into the Mothman prophecies too hard, and that's exactly what they believe. Either way, I wanted to see if there was any truth to these stories about the Mothman being at Chernobyl and in New York, and what I found was surprising. Now, apparently, prior to the Chernobyl meltdown, several workers witnessed a 7-foot-tall humanoid winged figure. It too was headless but had red eyes. The locals referred to it as the Blackbird. The workers who supposedly witnessed this creature became plagued by nightmares and even received threatening phone calls. This story is incredible. However, the hard part is trying to verify if it's true. An archaeologist named Robert Maxwell has done work at the exclusion zone, and he said that the locals in the area told him of the story, so we know the story is true. The question is, though, did this really happen, or is this a myth that we created after the disaster? Unfortunately, all the workers who apparently saw this creature are all dead, making it hard to verify the story. As for the story about the Mothman being spotted in New York City before September 11, well, I could not find much. Unlike actually news reports, the theory really is ambiguous and leaves that up in the air as to whether the sighting really happened. El Chupacabras, translated into English, basically just means goat sucker. This creature of nightmares was first reported in 1995 in Puerto Rico. It was claimed that a strange animal had been attacking goats and sheep and other livestock instead of eating the goats and the sheep for a meal. The only thing this creature seemed to be after was the blood. In fact, witnesses claimed that this creature would puncture the animals and then drain the carcass of all its blood. What is interesting is how the Chupacabra is described. In Puerto Rico, it was described as this reptilian kangaroo demonic creature that stood upright and had red eyes, while others describe it as being the size of a small dog or bear with spikes running out of its back. Its skin is supposedly greenish or gray and leathery looking, and it hops around like a kangaroo. Others describe it like a different kind of animal. They say this Chupacabra looks almost canine-like, the only difference being it is hairless and the head looks different. Skeptics point out that a movie called Species came out in 1995, and the monster in that movie was the inspiration for the tales of the Chupacabra. I'm not exactly sure if that's the case. However, I'm shocked they didn't blame it on sleep paralysis and call it a day. Other explanations for the Chupacabra are that people are seeing a hairless Mexican dog or a coyote with mange or a canine hybrid. They claim that the debilitating condition of mange would make an animal act differently and would explain why these animals are attacking domesticated animals compared to wild animals. While there's never been any proof of a reptilian kangaroo-looking animal hopping around, there is some video evidence that shows a strange canine-looking animal running around. Whatever the case is, I find it highly unlikely that whatever people were seeing in Puerto Rico was a dog with mange. I also don't know if that the movie was the basis of the Chupacabra either, whether they're real or not. I just hope that I never have the pleasure of stepping out my front door and seeing a strange reptilian creature moving around. The Fresno nightcrawler is yet another infamous California cryptid. Although this creature hasn't been seen by nearly as many people, it does have some compelling proof as it was captured on security footage and is being dubbed the Fresno nightcrawler, because there is some confusion about when this creature was first spotted. Some places report that these strange, creepy-looking creatures were first reported in the 1990s. However, it is agreed upon that the first video evidence emerged in 2007. The story goes that in 2007, a local person living in Fresno, who wishes to remain anonymous, was terrified after reviewing their security footage. Mystified and terrified, they took their footage to Univision. Univision apparently didn't have any good explanation of what was going on in the video, so this person then submitted the video to a variety of paranormal investigators. One thing led to another, and the video eventually ended up on the show, Fact or Faked. After running multiple experiments, they concluded that to fake this video would be very hard, and concluded that it was more likely than not genuine. This now opens up a whole bunch of questions. What are these things that look like walking pants? The truth is that nobody knows, and there aren't too many recorded encounters. However, it is important to note that Native Americans that originated in the area have lore that talk about these creatures. According to them, these creatures were on Earth long before humans. The reason they look the way they do is that they usually come from the swamp world. They claim that they are now part of a world and they are peaceful creatures whose purpose is to bring us back into harmony with our natural surroundings. Keeping up with the theme of legendary Native American cryptids, this next animal is referred to as the deer woman. What is interesting about the deer woman is that there are two different species concerning them. The Native Americans that resided in the central plains and woodlands of North America view the deer woman as benign. It was said that these creatures would appear to people as a sign of fertility. The appearance is described as either being a deer with human features or being a direct human-deer hybrid. The Central Plain Indians, though, did say that sometimes these deer women would seduce men that were adulterers and lead them to their death or curse them with a life of pursuing love, but never finding it. However, if you ask the Oklahoma natives about the deer woman, they have nothing good to say. They say a typical encounter with a deer lady goes something like this. An innocent man will be walking along the trail, minding his own business, and suddenly he will see what looks like a girl standing off to the side of the trail. She will then call to the man, and if the man comes over and responds to her summons, he will notice that she looks like a beautiful young woman. However, he soon sees that she has deer hooves for feet and brown eyes that look like deer eyes. Unfortunately for the man, he notices too late, and then she then decides to take care of him. Others claim that when you come across a deer lady, that it is a severe warning or could be a sign of personal transformation. One interesting thing is that the deer lady likes to dance and will often crash ceremonial dance nights. Often, she goes unnoticed and will dance till the drums stop. However, if she does get noticed, she usually will bolt. Some tribes don't take kindly to the crashing of their dancing ceremonies, so they have come up with ways to banish her. They say they can ward these creatures off with the use of tobacco and an ancient spell. Others claim that if you ever find yourself caught in the deer woman's trap, make sure you look at her feet, and it will break her spell, and she will run off before she finishes you off. I'm not too sure myself, but there are countless Native American stories and claims that she does exist. Not only do they believe they are real, but there's also a general terror when it comes to these creatures. I mean, who can blame them? The last thing I want to think about when I encounter a beautiful woman in the forest is whether or not she's going to stomp my skull in. We've all heard of Slender Man, but probably none of us have ever heard of Black Stickman. Stickman, or men, are described as 2D abnormally tall, slender beings. They are dead quiet and they cast no shadow. Many claim they are charged with electricity. Many witnesses claim that once an encounter starts, they will feel this surge of aggression or agitation. This can cause many people to believe these creatures give off a negative energy of sorts. They seem to be a relatively new phenomenon, and while many sightings have been dismissed as a hoax, there is some evidence out there that is up in the air. Mark Wolfgang Miller went out looking for these creatures and claims to have caught one on camera. However, he claims it is not as a good picture, but it's there. You can be the judge. The Darku. Scottish have the Loch Ness Monster, and the Irish, well, they have the Darku. It is in the opinion of most people that this monster is now extinct. However, some people believe that a few might remain on Ackle Island. This creature is the stuff of nightmares. It is described as being a great otter. Others describe it as being a half-fish, half-dog hybrid, and other strange names which translate to Irish crocodile. This thing is apparently quite aggressive and does not favor humans or dogs. In fact, one story goes that in the 17th century, a woman named Grace McLoughlin was washing her clothes in the nearby body of water called Glenade Low. Her husband was alerted by her screams and came rushing over to see what was wrong. When he got there, it was too late. The Darku had already mutilated her body. Her husband instantaneously attacked the beast and killed it by stabbing it right in the heart. However, before it died, it let out this scream, and then out of the water came another one. Now this other one attacked the man and took him down. This brings us to another creepy aspect about this creature, and that is that they usually attack in pairs. Legends say that one would begin the attack, and if it failed, it would return with its friends. It also didn't matter if you were in the water or on land. It would pursue you until it got tired or determined that the person was not worth the effort. Another interesting thing about this creature is that, unlike the other creatures here on this list, there is actually some archaeological evidence that shows perhaps this creature did indeed exist. There is a gravestone known as Kinlough Stone. It is told that the woman is buried there, and she was a victim of the Darku in the 17th century. Another related gravestone is called the Glenade Stone. This stone actually has a Darku carved onto it. Thankfully, most people believe that if this creature ever did exist, it is actually now extinct. However, there are some people believe that they are still around, and they point to a 2003 sighting by Sean Corcoran. Hopefully, though, that is the last time it will ever be spotted. This creature has a very unusual name, Snallygaster. This creature can reportedly be found in Frederick County, Maryland. This creature gets its unique name from the German immigrants who settled in the area in the 1730s. They tell stories of being terrorized by a half-bird, half-reptile with a metallic beak lined with sharp teeth. Sometimes it apparently even had octopus-like tentacles. This terrifying creature was said to be able to swoop down quietly from the sky, grab a victim, and carry it off. It liked to suck the blood out of its victims. Apparently, though, if you have a painted 7-pointed star on your property, it would have been enough to keep this horror away from your house. In fact, you can still see the stars painted on some really old barns. The locals at the time called this beast Schnellergeist, which translates into faster spirit. Over time, though, the stories of this creature faded into obscurity in history. However, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, something strange was being reported yet again. Now, our good buddy the Skeptics claim that these stories were brought back in order to scare the newly freed African American slaves. Things really hit ahead in February and March of 1909, because newspapers began to report about locals who had encountered a beast that was described as having an eye in the center of its forehead, a long beak, a gigantic wingspan, and claws of steel. Things got so wild that the Smithsonians even offered a reward for its corpse. President Theodore Roosevelt considered backing out of a safari trip to head to Maryland to look for this monster himself. At the end of the day, though, no corpse was ever recovered, and the only thing we have to go on is local accounts. Around the same time that the Snallygaster was terrorizing Maryland, another monster was terrorizing the residents of Arizona. In 1903, I.W. Stevens encountered a humanoid creature in the Grand Canyon. Stevens described the beast as having gray hair and a beard that reached its knees and talons. 4 decades later, Don Davis encountered the same creature in the same area. However, these are not only people who have experienced this Sasquatch-like creature. Over the years, an image has begun to emerge, and that image is something like this. The Mogollon Monster is reportedly around 7 feet tall. It has insane strength and is covered in black or reddish-brown fur. It is incredibly violent and has an awful body odor. The smell is often compared to that of a skunk or dead fish, or decaying peat moss. It apparently walks with wide, inhuman strides and leaves behind 22-inch footprints. That is huge. Its favorite method of hunting is apparently to decapitate its victims. Thankfully, this beast has only been spotted in Arizona. Once again, the skeptics claim you have nothing to worry about, as this beast is nothing more than a misidentified grizzly bear, but however, it also doesn't help that in 2006, a member of the Apache Nation came forward and said this: "We're not prone to easily talk to outsiders, but there have been more sightings than ever before. It cannot be ignored any longer." It also doesn't help that Lieutenant Ray Burnett from the tribal police has reported seeing a creature on a couple of occasions that match the descriptions of the Mogollon. He also says that over the years, he has received calls from citizens saying a strange creature was looking through their window. He said that he believes these reports as they come from trusted members of the community who were not drunk and were genuinely terrified of what they saw. Now, with that in mind, I'm not so sure that a Mogollon Monster is a misidentified bear, as I am sure the Apache know what a grizzly bear is, or at least a bear, and can easily differentiate a bear from a creature, at least like the one they're describing. Then again though, I'm not a zoologist. What's interesting about the Mogollon Monster is that the name Mogollon is actually Spanish, and it's theorized that it predates the natives being in the area. But if the Mogollon does have Spanish origins, then what does that mean? Does that change its existence? Does that mean it's been around in the area longer than Bigfoot or any of the other creatures that supposedly exist? Really though, no matter which way you spin it, the Mogollon Monster is something I do not want to meet. The Mamlambo, a supposed mutant creature that's really the stuff of nightmares. Imagine a creature that is a combination of a snake, a crocodile, and a horse that has 4 legs. Now that you've pictured that, also add to that mixture that it is a bioluminescent creature and appears green at night. Also, picture 2 gleaming green eyes that have the power to mesmerize and captivate its victims. If you ever visit South Africa, that is the story you will hear from the local Zulu and indigenous populations that live along that river. It is claimed that this monster has a taste for brains, and not like a zombie. It likes to catch its victims and drown them. And once they're drowned, it likes to crack open the soft skull and eat the contents within. While many of the locals are convinced that this creature is real, police aren't having any of it. In fact, the police say that the victims that people claim are the victims of this Mamlambo are just actually drowned victims. Police also say that any parts of the face that have been eaten away are merely the work of river crabs. So, case closed. The locals don't think so though. They claim that reports of this monster go back thousands of years and they are not being superstitious. So who's right? And who really knows? When it comes to marine animals, it can be very hard to identify, but after all, South Africa is known for its mystique and strange cryptids all running throughout it, if you look into its history. It is possible there could be something lurking around that river. So, more importantly, what do you believe? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to know your guys' opinions. And also guys, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to go ahead and smack that like button. And if you're new to the channel and enjoy this kind of content, be sure to go ahead and hit that big ol' red subscribe button and keep your notifications turned on, as it really helps my channel out. And with that said, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll catch you guys in the very next episode.